Erev Shabbos. Just gonna give a quick Dvar Torah before Shabbos. I wanted to write that I recently overheard a conversation about the pandemic, but then I realized there's no way that I overheard a conversation since I've barely seen anyone that I know in several weeks already. And so I remember that actually, more accurately, I recently saw a conversation between friends who were talking on social media about how this current moment, the coronavirus pandemic, how it relates to a famous line from the original Star Trek movies. In the Star Trek movie Wrath of Khan, which came out in 1982, Spock, famous for his Vulcan rationality, states at the beginning of the movie, logic clearly dictates that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Now, someone that I know, it might have even been a member of Kadima, I don't remember, said that this philosophy matches the policy of flatten the curve that much of the world is embracing. That by us choosing to socially distance from each other and to avoid contact with friends and family and coworkers, we are all making a sacrifice for the greater good, a sacrifice by the many, by the few on behalf of the many. But I think that this is actually a misreading of our moment, and I want to explain. The Torah, when introducing the karbanot, the sacrifices, the offerings, the Torah phrases the act of bringing an offering to Hashem in a peculiar way. The simplest way to talk about a case in which an individual is bringing a karban is to say, Ki akriv adam yikem karban laHashem. That which would mean, when a man among you will bring an offering to Hashem. Right? The word mikem is after Adam, is after the noun, because it's a man among you. But instead, the Torah put the word mikem after the verb. Adam ki akriv mikem karban laHashem. A man, when he will offer from you an offering to Hashem. And the question is asked in many commentaries, why is the word mikem placed after the verb, after yakriv, instead of after the word Adam, which would have been more grammatically correct, which would have more closely matched the meaning that it seems that the Torah was going for, that when a person, an individual, wants to bring a karban. The Gemara in Sukkah answers that the Torah is teaching us a technical law about sacrifices, that a karban is not accepted by Hashem, is not considered valid, is pasul, is not considered fulfillment of the mitzvah, unless the person that is offering that karban owns the animal that he is offering, that he owned it himself. But if he stole that animal, if that animal does not belong to him and he is sacrificing it, then the karban is as pasul, as invalid, as one that has a blemish, as one that couldn't be brought for physical reasons. And Rav David Stav, in his book Parshat Ketana, asks why that even needs to be stated. Why would the Torah need to tell us that you can't bring a stolen karban? How could anyone think that bringing an animal that is stolen as a karban would be valid to begin with? And he explains that we as humans have a tendency to focus our attention on our personal, individual physical well-being rather than that of others. And on the other hand, we tend to scrutinize the spiritual behavior of others and not focus on our own. Says Rav Stav, we need to reverse this tendency, to focus on our own spirituality, to scrutinize our own behavior, to decide when we need to be bringing a sacrifice to Hashem from ourselves, while we also need to care about the physical well-being of others and protect their property and their health. The karban has to come mikem, from you, from an accounting solely derived from what you personally need, from your spiritual growth, and not in comparison to that of others. You are not superior to other people, and you cannot grow spiritually at the expense of others' money, much less at the expense of others' safety, health, and well-being. The prophet Malachi criticizes such selfish behavior explicitly. You have been bringing, he says, as a criticism, you have been bringing stolen animals and lame animals and the sick. You've been sacrificing the sick. This lesson by itself is important in the context of the social distancing and the canceling of inyanim and other ritual events and yeshivot and shuls all over the world that have been taking place in recent weeks. It's teaching us that you cannot have a minyan or a big wedding or a shir in a yeshiva. You cannot choose your own spiritual well-being at the expense of others' safety, at the risk of spreading a virus that is highly contagious and that spreads quicker in group settings. To do so is to bring a karban, to bring an offering to Hashem that is not mikem, that is not from you personally, but rather min hagazul, at the expense of others, min hacholeh, at the expense of the sick. But Rav Stav goes a step further. There is a Hasidic reading of Adam ki yakriv mikem karban Hashem, of putting the word mikem after the verb, that translates essentially as follows. Regarding man when he sacrifices, the offering must be mikem, from you, meaning from yourself, not just from your property, but from who you are, from your personality. In other words, the karban is not just an act of roasting meat that smells good and puts Hashem in a good mood. That's not what a karban is. It's not some kind of ritual just like that. No. A karban represents to us, it reminds us of self-sacrifice, of our choice to put some value ahead of ourselves. In a cynical world, it is sometimes hard to remember, says Rav Stav, that there are people who really do sacrifice their lives for a cause. And the question is, what cause should we be willing to sacrifice for? In the Star Trek movie, Spock asserts that the rational approach, the rational thing to do, is to self-sacrifice only when it's the few sacrificing on the altar of the many. That the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and certainly the needs of the one. And he gives up his life to save the Starship Enterprise and those on board, or at least he thinks he's sacrificing his life, based on this principle. But that is not the calculation that we make as Jews. As Captain Needs of the Many in the context of the novel coronavirus outbreak could be seen as the need to continue with normal life, to keep the economy going, to let the vulnerable suffer, the 20% who need to go to the hospital and the smaller percentage that would die, to sacrifice those people in order to preserve a functioning society and economy, to protect against unemployment, to protect against loneliness. Social distancing is a sacrifice of the many for the sake of the few, to protect those who would die or suffer from contracting the virus. A more cynical person than Captain Kirk might have said that there is another reason why we might have thought that social distancing would never have worked or become popular. Even the Torah itself states that man is raminu rav, that human beings are fundamentally selfish and unwilling to put others first. But what we are witnessing is something almost miraculous and far from raminu rav. According to a recent poll, 92% of Americans are avoiding public events, and more than 70% are avoiding going out in public at all. And even more impressive, we are witnessing as businesses are shutting themselves down, knowing that they might be gone with no customers. Tens of thousands of frontline healthcare workers are putting themselves at significant risk to save COVID-19 patients. Retirees from medicine and from the military are coming back into service as volunteers to risk their lives for the sake of many others. What we are watching the world prove is that we are not ultimately selfish beings in search of just our own personal survival. We are able to sacrifice ourselves. Adam ki yakriv mikem. We are able to sacrifice ourselves, mikem, yourself, for others, the many on behalf of the few. Jake Tapper, a journalist for CNN, tweeted this week the well-known quote from the Gemara in Sanhedrin, also famously cited in the Holocaust movie Schindler's List, that anyone who takes a life is considered as if he destroyed the world, and anyone who saves a life is considered as if he saved the world. We consider human life intrinsically valuable in a way that nothing else compares, and we sometimes are called to put the lives of others before our own well-being, even to put at risk the majority for the sake of the few. And let us continue to act in this way, in the spirit of Adam ki yakriv mikem, karban Hashem, of sacrificing some of our own happiness and our own well-being for the sake of the lives of others, and for Hashem, for halacha, and not put our own spirituality ahead of the safety of our community. May we soon have the opportunity to come together again in person and daven in a minyan that is our karban, our offering from ourselves to Hashem, and thanks for His protection together as a shul and as a community and as a people and as a world. Good Shabbos, be well, and stay safe.